Briefly remind us with your role with the company and the length of service at the company?
Amanda Luan. I'm the co-founder and CEO, and I've been here about 10, 11 years since the beginning.
Wonderful. And what motivated you to start the business again?
To build community, and I myself was the customer, so I experienced the pain point. I was working in advertising for a couple years, and I got laid off. So I thought, I'm going to try freelancing, but I don't want to be at my house. So I was that individual experiencing that pain point of needing a space and a community.
That sounds great. And how would you describe the community that Bamboo Detroit serves? Like in terms of your primary customers versus your secondary customers?
Our primary customers are the office customers. Those are typically small businesses and startups. Sometimes they're individual executives or individuals starting a company that need a private office. And then our secondary is probably like just remote workers, general individuals.
Wonderful. What community problems, I guess, just needs the gap in existence did Bamboo Detroit address?
Flexible space. So it depends on each customer. We kind of talked about this already, but not building out an HQ for your team, needing something more flexible and modern and hybrid. And then if you're an individual, needing to get out of the house, either to focus or to find, to like break down social isolation.
Sounds great. And how exactly did you determine that this problem was, I guess, like important enough to support a business?
I was experiencing the problem myself along with friends. That's a great question. We did not know. We were like 26, 27, so we had no idea what we were doing. But we were able to build a community and slowly get traction. And then as soon as we offered private offices, we sort of realized 1 out of every 3 leads wanted a private office in Detroit. And then we saw what WeWork was doing, for better or for worse, and realized that private offices are what make the model sustainable. And that sort of influenced our decision early on to expand.
Yeah, that's great. And finally, I guess assuming that customers' needs could be addressed in more way, how did you streamline this specific solution? Like, what made you think this would be the best opportunity possible?
There actually wasn't an alternative, guys, in downtown Detroit when we started. There was no Regis. Actually, maybe there was Regis, but there's no corporate and different. There wasn't anything for entrepreneurs. There was no WeWork. We were started before WeWork, and then as we expanded, they moved in next door to us. So there was no need. There was no solution in Detroit at the time.
That's awesome to hear. Thank you so much for letting us know. And
then expanding to the other cities, it's like getting a vibe of how underdeveloped the market is, where people are working, and how busy coffee shops are, as well as looking at the local competitors and if they have private offices. And so all ages, all people, types of company work at Bamboo. And so we've kind of got most of our programming supportive. It's like we have like 2 programming tracks, like social programming so that anyone can connect and network, and then programming for entrepreneurs, so small businesses and startups. But in reality, we service everybody. So student, mostly if it's a student, they're like a grad student or a professional. Undergrads use libraries and coffee shops. Remote workers, which is growing and changing. So I first remote for a company. They'll either personally pay for membership or their company will give them credits. Small businesses, startups. Once in a while, we do have corporations. I would say, though, most people think about us for small businesses and startups, but broadly, we service everybody.
Gotcha. And what would you say the split is, just if you had to give a rough guess, between entrepreneurs and the more social class that you described of remote workers that aren't in a startup, or rather for a corporation that might have credits from their company?
No idea. I'd have to dig into that. We have 1,400 members now across 3 locations.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a lot.
And in each location is going to have a slightly different. The thing about co-working too, it is hospitality, and it's a little bit more akin to retail business, so it's very hyper local. So in Detroit, we have some bigger startups that are Series A, Series B, the bigger teams, so the numbers might be different there. Royal Oak, we probably have a lot of individuals. The bread and butter of our model that makes our model sustainable is private office sales too. So for those who don't know co-working, you have multiple membership options: virtual offices, co-working desks, and private offices. But private offices, they tend to be more established companies. So you have 1 to 40. And you can afford to pay anything from $500 a month to $5,000 a month. So, we have I guess the other challenge here is we have a lot of different audiences. But the bread and butter audience that we always need to stabilize location is the offices, and then that balances out the rest of the amenities for everybody else. So, as thinking about being kind of like our priority customers, having those offices always filled and stabilized. And the value there is different. Individual guys probably understand a little bit more. It's like a coffee shop is busy and loud. I need a professional space to work out of, or I'm lonely at home and I want to connect with others. Some of that does apply to the office member, but the office member is probably more established. You need a presence for clients. Maybe they have a bigger team. They're a startup that has 40 people, and they want to come in once a week, have a hybrid setup, and they want to impress customers. So each kind of audience team, I'd say.
Gotcha. And out of those customers that you were talking about, so you said you get a lot from private offices, and you were talking about how it's divvied up and how the hybrid between certain companies that might support that as well. What are the primary customer segments that you would say your business serves? Just sort of generally after speaking about that, I'm sure. So we said one of them would be like people that are working hybrid or remote, just off the bat.
Yeah, remote workers and growing startups and small businesses.
Okay.
But broadly, any industry and any type of person.
Gotcha. And then what features of Bamboo make it more appealing or more unique as opposed to other co-working spaces or other spaces for rent? What do you guys capitalize on to sort of to make your business different or stand out from other competitors?
Yeah, I think our main competitors, we view ourselves in competition with, are like a Regis or a WeWork, so national brands. And how we vary is the culture in the community, as well as the product design. So if you go into a WeWork, their offices are all glass. They're very high end, they're very expensive, but there's no privacy. Our offices are comfortable frosted glass and controlled burner. So there's more privacy, there's more flexibility, you have more of an identity at a Bamboo than a WeWork space. I have a little brand package I can share with you guys later that kind of compares the two. But you're pretty much getting the same actual services. I would also say location, because it's retail. Our Royal Oak space is literally in the best location in downtown Royal Oak, and we constantly get foot traffic, like people just walking in. We're hoping for that in Ann Arbor. We just opened there, and honestly would love your thoughts more on the Ann Arbor community. But that's a big part of it. So the location strategically, you can't compete and find a Main Street location. It's extremely difficult to do in real estate. Then the nitty-gritty product details, and then the culture in the community. You can kind of think about it too, you go to a Starbucks or a local coffee shop. The vibe is different, the people, the way you're treated. We hire community builders, and we encourage them to throw events 2 to 3 times a month. We often hire people and teach them this whole approach to building that culture and community. That's really hard to do. That's probably the hardest thing to replicate. And a WeWork or Regis just isn't going to care. They're a big company. They aren't communities ingrained in the local communities they serve. We also have moved more towards an owner operator model, so we bring in investors to purchase our properties. So, not to get too nitty-gritty, and I don't know how much of this is of interest, but we work leases their space on long-term leases. And if a landlord to pay for the build-out, we buy our properties, and it commits an investor to buy the property with us and live there. So we're kind of more committed for long term and have a little more control over the hospitality experience too.
Gotcha. That's super interesting. I didn't realize that you guys appealed so much more to being local. The local coffee shop and Starbucks comparison was super helpful. We would totally appreciate that brand package that you were talking about. That sounds super useful.
Yeah, I've done it down for you. The other way to think about it too in Ann Arbor is Ann Arbor, Texas is a smaller city. Most of these bigger brands don't open in these smaller cities. Regis is there, but they're in the suburbs. We still like to have a walkable downtown area. And Regis is very corporate and very like, if you guys actually walk into a Regis or WeWork and let it go, you kind of see all this.
Well, yeah, we were thinking about definitely going to see both you guys in Ann Arbor because you guys are close to get more of a real feel for what the business and what the product is itself.
Yeah, you guys can come in anytime and come work and hang out. The other thing too is like with this Ann Arbor location going forward is trying to have amenities that you don't normally have in your house or your home. It's a little harder in a more affluent community like Ann Arbor, but we have a rooftop deck. We have a big classroom training space. We have cold brew coffee, sparkling water machines, things that like most people just don't have. And it gives you, another reason to get out of the house, but we want our brand to be more about the community and less about the physical space sometimes too.
All right. And then, how do you guys get new customers? Just what's your advertising, your marketing strategy right now, and what's your occupancy rate for the private offices, for the conference rooms, stuff like that?
Yeah, so because it's retail hospitality, it's very like hyper local. You know what market you want to be in, so you want to get out of your house or set up an office in Ann Arbor. So you're going to Google search co-working in Ann Arbor. Hopefully we're going to come up organically. We also have paid digital marketing ads, but that's one of the number one strategies. Along with community building, which is very events driven. So lots of free events and or rentals and partnered events just to drive large scale foot traffic in the door. And so like last Friday, we participated in the tech track. We had 3 events going on at once. We had a job fair, a rental in the classroom, and then a public event with Midwest House. We probably had 150 people come through. Out of that, maybe 10 or 50 were tour, and maybe we'll get 1 or 2 sign-ups. So it's like we're still very new in the Ann Arbor community, but it's mostly through events, through Google search. And then the physical retail experience side is if you pick the right location, people will just walk right in. When they walk past your building and say, oh, this is co-working. I walked past it 20 times. I'm ready to sign up. We do probably need to do more marketing in the Ann Arbor area. In Detroit, we're 80% full. In Royal Oak, we're usually 90 to 100% full. We think that's mostly the location.
Gotcha.
And then in Ann Arbor, we're about 50% full. So we're kind of tracking where we should be, but we wanted to be 100% full by spring of next year.
Gotcha. By spring of next year. Okay. And then lastly, how do you guys, just for me, before one of my teammates takes over the remainder, how do you guys receive and process customer feedback? Or what's your customer service interaction look like just on a weekly basis?
We try to encourage it directly and frequently. So we try to have a culture where any point of feedback, once people are in the door and on site, they do just talk to our team at the front desk. We have a community director and a community coordinator, and in Ann Arbor, a part-time events associate to help with the events on nights and weekends. So a lot of time the feedback is just like, hey, I'd love if you guys did X. And we try to empower our teams locally to act on that feedback as soon as possible. Some of it, if it's construction related, can't be done. Like, oh, hey, and usually that doesn't happen, but like, hey, We need an extra conference room. Okay, maybe we can turn an office to a conference room, but we can't physically build things once construction's done, at least for a while. And then we do a spring survey, which we actually missed this year, which is kind of horrible of us. And then we do a deeper kind of dive in the fall. And that deeper dive is more about, spring survey is more like a quick gut check, like how happy are you with Bamboo on a scale 1 to 5? Would you work for us? How happy are you with our facilities, our community, our team? In the fall, towards the end of the year, October, November, we try to deep dive people on their business goals and form the events we produced all year, what was helpful to you, and kind of get more in the detail, nitty-gritty. So it's kind of a mix of just always encouraging our local teams to be the eyes and the ears and empowered and react sooner, and then a couple thoughtful surveys throughout the year, but not too much so that we're not bombarding folks.
Gotcha. And then they purchase memberships and stuff online as well. All that's just digital.
Yeah.
Jackson, I was just thinking back to when you said that they could walk in off the street, or that if they walk back and forth, eventually they'll be enticed to come check it out, maybe utilize the co-working space. I just wanted to know if you guys had a sort of receptionist, or if it was digital keys through an app, and how they receive the actual.
It's more one-on-one than that, but the actual access in the space is all digital and through a technology system. But so there's different ways you might find us. You might come to the event and then say, hey, I want to sign up on the spot. We can upload you in our system. Usually we send a link, you fill out your profile, and then you get invited to a mobile app that acts as your keys to the space. And you have a software that you use for booking, for finding members, for managing your invoices. We have a Slack community and a newsletter that you'll get for connecting with the community. But oftentimes, with all that said, people fill out a form with their details, and then the next step would be to take a tour. So if you haven't been in the space yet, getting you into a tour in person so that you can see the space. If you're a warm lead but you're not ready to sign up, we'll give you a trial. That usually works really well. Come try the space for a week or for a month, and then hopefully you like it. Why not?
Gotcha. And is it a contract? Is it a certain period of time that they sign up for, or is it on a month-by-month basis?
Both. You could do a month-by-month, 6 months, or 1 year. It's discounted to incentivize 1 year or 6 months. 20% off the month-to-month rate for 1 year, 10% off for 6 months. You can just drop in and buy a day pass or a package of day passes. You don't get full access 24/7 to the space. You can only come in Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So any Bamboo space, usually 80% of our revenue is the monthly memberships, whether that's 1 year, 6 months, or month. Most people sign up for 1 year and stay multiple years because they're happy. It just really depends on their life, their circumstance, their business. And then the other 20% of revenue is rentals. We are a little more rental forward right now in Ann Arbor. I don't know if that's because we're still building the monthly recurring revenue through memberships, or if that's just because this space, we have a rooftop event space, so it was just booked out. I did a bunch over the summer. So still kind of learning the market in Ann Arbor.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you so much. And then I'm actually gonna pass the questions off to one of my teammates now. But thank you for everything. I really appreciate that. That was all super helpful.
Yeah, thank you for your time. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Ishu Consul. I'm actually a junior here in computer science, and I really do love entrepreneurship, which is why actually last summer I did intern at a startup in Ann Arbor called SkySpecs. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but actually they might be one of your core customers. If you do want to get them on board, I know that they have an office on South Ashley Street, actually, and their offices are usually quite empty, so I'm sure they're looking for some kind of downside.
Their team, they've been renting space from us, but they're in a long-term lease, so they're not ready to make any changes. But what you're talking to is the exact problem that we're seeing more and more post-pandemic is these big companies, they'll put all this space, and then they don't need it. Nobody's coming in, or you were saying, SkySpecs has 7 people in, and they have this entire building.
Yeah, so okay, I do want to ask you one thing is, do you offer longer contracts for larger clients, like the corporations that book you? Do they sign up for anything like 3 or 4 years, or is it just a yearly thing?
We do that on a case-by-case basis. I would say we have seen more of an increase in 2-year requests, University of Michigan just asked us for a Detroit office and asked for 2.5 years. But we would be totally open to an idea like that. I think what we could use some help with from you all is like, how do we embed ourselves more in Ann Arbor and get the word out more and build that culture and community? And then I would love your thoughts on like how we build out more of a corporate partner program, because our startups and small businesses are our bread and butter. We know them, and they tend to like the short term. But I could definitely see corporates wanting like 2 years, 3 years, 5-year presence. You know.
Yeah, I think in Detroit especially, there's a lot of Detroit development happening, especially with the new skyscrapers that are coming up. So I think there's adequate opportunity there for new corporate sponsors. I think we'll have to talk about this more once we research it, but I think that's definitely like an avenue to pursue for increased revenue, because obviously when you have corporate sponsors like that rent out large amounts of space for steady income for longer contracts, like 3 or 4 years, then you're much more secure financially, right? I mean, that was the problem with WeWork, right? Is that they offered very short-term contracts, which when COVID hit, everyone canceled, and they were left with
another problem with WeWork, but they had a lot more problems behind the scenes than just like the customer-facing side. But yes, 100% agree with you on that, and I think that'd be really interesting to explore with you all. The other thing I should note is what makes us different is we're regional, and we're going to be opening a Grand Rapids location next year. Probably do a 5th one up in Traverse City. So like, if you choose to have your corporate HQ in Detroit with us, your team can access all these other locations, which is an interesting perk that like other local like co-working spaces can't do. And I don't think we've like communicated that well or figured out what that value prop is,
Yeah. So in terms of your corporate membership, do you guys have any general large corporate sponsors right now, like Ford or GM?
I wouldn't call them sponsors. We did do a paid partnership with Ford before, where they sponsored some events. We call them members. So if they're signing up for a membership, we have had a few, mostly remote workers. We are signing up senior leadership with Johnson Controls right now. They're a Fortune 100 company in Ann Arbor. Their senior leadership lives in Ann Arbor. So we have had a handful of Fortune 100, Fortune 500 clients. Most of them, though, tend to be their remote workers getting paid team credits, and it's very, like, nuanced. So it's not like, it's kind of rare that it's senior leadership at a Fortune 100 signing up. It's more common that, like, okay, my team offers $200 a month for co-working, and I happen to live in Ann Arbor, and I work for Spotify, and I'm going to use that credit to sign up for Bamboo. That's a little bit more common, and might be more common. I don't know. That's something you guys could all dive into. Like, has co-working shifted away from big headquarters to more individuals? That's kind of what real estate market feels like to me right now, but would love your thoughts exploring that.
Yeah, that'd be a really interesting question to explore. I mean, I think I'm on the same page with you, where I think that the very, very large offices are dead, but companies are still renting very expensive, but much, much smaller places. Like, I know that I'm from Jersey, and even in New York City, like, there's a bunch of new skyscrapers that are coming up that are renting, like, double or triple by the square foot for extremely premium office space. But these clients are now renting, say, 1/3 of what they usually rent. But now they're interested in very high-end spaces with all those amenities. That's what I've seen.
Yes, 100%. So most of the demand has moved to Class A office space, which is, like, the best and the brightest, because you can ask for that. Landlords are suffering a lot right now in the Class B, Class C space, or if they have space that the whole cycle in commercial real estate takes forever too. It's like 5 to 10 year sales cycle. People used to sign these long-term leases. Most people don't want that anymore. But I think your challenge is done to, like, is it the individual or is it the team setting up a space presence? In Detroit, our space is a little more outdated, and we can't afford to update it. So each market too has just its own push and pull. It's like you have Ford open $1 billion campus, Michigan Central New Lab, and they're giving away really free discounted space. People are also still coming back to downtowns. I think this is something we're fighting in Ann Arbor, is like people are still trying to get people out of their house and back to a downtown area. And if you're working remote, you kind of like have no reason to, unless we give you a reason, right?
Right. So
sorry, this is a lot of context and info for you guys, but I'm trying to like just give you as much context as possible.
Yeah, no, this is amazing. This is giving us a lot of information to move forward, so that's great. In terms of what you guys actually do in terms of property acquisition and the renovation, like, are you targeting those lower end Class B office space and then renovating them up to Class A or Class A and a half or something like that by offering all these new amenities and new TVs, microphones, everything?
Actually, I have a whole overview deck about our model. I should have just sent it to you guys before the call, but I'll send it afterwards. I'm gonna make a note. So that touches a little bit on it. So I'll send you guys the brand package, and I'll send you guys our overview, and I'll send you the details on Grand Rapids because you can kind of see a little bit more how we select that. But that would be ideal. That is not what we did in Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor, a tech company named Clink fully renovated our space. Steel cage furniture. They paid the bill. And then because it was sitting empty for so long, we were able to pick it up on a discount. In Grand Rapids, it's probably considered Class A space, but it's like this giant art studio gallery space that's been empty for 3 or 4 years, right on downtown in Grand Rapids. And it's been completely empty and unused for 4 years, so we're able to get it on a discount. And then we do have to come in and do our investment and make sure the financials work. So that long term, I would also help with an exit strategy. I don't know if you guys are just picking a couple things you're working on. I think our biggest kind of company priorities would be improving our branding overall as a company so that we can tell more of our story and value now that we're 3 locations. We just opened Ann Arbor 6 months ago. 2, getting our sales and community growing more, a little faster in Ann Arbor. And then maybe 3, if this excites you guys, how do you exit a company like this, where you own the property and you're operating it for 5-10 years? And then what is that kind of later stage exit? And it could be interesting too, because now that I've been in this industry for 5-10 years, I'm looking at the next 10 years and trying to, when you buy a property, it's such a massive decision. I don't know if that answered your question, but just giving you guys some more thoughts. We look for downtown, walkable areas. We're trying to replicate the success we've had in Royal Oak. You cannot copy our location. You cannot copy being on Main and Main in a downtown area that's growing. In Ann Arbor, we're not on Main Street because parking is actually really challenging. And it's a university town, so the market is kind of skewed. It's a little different. We should be floated by the university and its business. And we're starting to kind of build those relationships. But being on Washington felt more accessible. People were kind of closer to where the professionals might live versus the students, who aren't our primary audience. They're more like a subset. Parking is huge.
Yeah, that's definitely valid. I know that a lot of companies, even when I was interning at SkySpecs, we would go out for company lunches, and there were just a lot of office workers in that area of Ann Arbor.
Yeah, so SkySpecs is interesting because you could use them as a case study, really. They're changing. They built this HQ out. They don't need it. Yeah. I guarantee you, at the end of their lease, at year 5, year 7, they're going to exit that space.
Oh, 100%.
They'll have 80 people living remote, I think, in Ann Arbor. So they still need options. Currently, they're a customer by doing rentals for larger team events that their current space can't handle. But that's the number one way bigger teams come back, is for team offsites, for rentals. And then 2, they'll probably offer credits for people who just live in Ann Arbor and want to come into an office versus having that big building.
Yeah.
But they're a little more forward thinking because they're a startup. So there's probably a lot of other established companies that just haven't made decisions yet. What I've learned is that people always predict the future, and it takes a lot longer to get there than the predictions tend to be.
Yeah, I think some kind of marketing with presenting some kind of financial analysis on how companies can save costs would be effective there. I'm sure you guys have already done that. But yeah, definitely figuring out a better way of marketing to the more established corporates would be most desired.
So I know this is all kind of complex. We're hospitality, but we're also real estate developers. Technically in Detroit, we don't own the building, we lease. In Royal Oak, we own and operate. And in Ann Arbor, we are leasing, but we're going to own it in a couple years when we're stable. And in Grand Rapids, we're going to own. So across each team, we have 2 to 3 people at each location running the day-to-day. Those are the director, the community director, community coordinator, and the events team. I'm the only full-time leader, so that's part of the problem. So when you're saying like marketing is all on me. I have a couple contractors I work with for content, but we don't have a marketing department. So we're kind of in like, we have a lot of growing pains. Because we're a 10-person company, I'm the only full-time senior leader. I have a business partner on the real estate development, and I have my husband, who is our finance kind of advisor and our technology advisor. Once Ann Arbor is stable, I'm going to hire a director of operations to manage, or like a general manager overseeing all that stuff. I could use some support on like thinking through that plan, but anyway, I'm just giving you guys clarity that like being smaller and being in a growth stage means that we are like desperate for more help, but haven't invested in that yet.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. So yeah, that actually leads to my next question, which was about like the main sources of revenue that you guys have, and first, what are your like revenue streams right now in terms of like quantities? Like, are we talking like 5 million, 10 million? Like, yeah.
You mean what size company are we by revenue?
Yeah.
This is all in that overview deck that I'm going to send you. But we're about, Detroit is a little bit smaller and has been hit harder from the pandemic. So if we're lucky, we're at like 700 grand a year. Royal Oak is constantly busy and has market rates. So they're still not recovering from the pandemic. They're pretty much stable and recovered. They're at like 1.3, 1.4 million. Ann Arbor being a slightly pricier market, when we're stable, we're hoping to get to 1.6 million. But we are quite a bit away from that. I can't tell you exactly where we're at, but that's like at probably end of year 2. We'll hopefully be up there.
That's amazing though. Do you have any plans to expand your Royal Oak location then, considering it's doing so well?
That is a great question. We've talked about it. The challenge is we'd have to construct 2 more floors on top of the building, and that could be really disruptive to our current customers. But Royal Oak is, I think, one of the top office markets. It's booming. It has really high usage. We have a few open offices right now, but that's rare. Like, it's just constantly super full. That team there is like probably like our highest performing sales team, but they also have like the benefit of the foot traffic I talked about. So we have loosely talked about that. We just haven't really explored it yet because construction costs are so high, which plays into this as well, because if you're a big company, you're not going to sign a long-term lease and you're not going to go build a space and get a building anymore probably, because construction costs have just gone up so much with inflation and impact from the pandemic. As I'm talking a lot, I'm like, there's this whole world before the pandemic and after that has just impacted our market so much and our industry.
Okay.
But we would like to, I think, if it made sense financially. We just haven't explored it.
Okay. So what are your main costs in terms of, what kind of expenditures are these? Like, you're a 10% company, so labor will be quite a big expense, but what about like development and all that?
Rent is the number one cost. So the development side is almost like a whole other business. So in Royal Oak, we acquired the property, we raised money from investors, we bought it at a certain price point, we invested in construction and build out. But what makes the value of a building is the lease. So we created a second structure, Bamboo Royal Oak LLC, that signs a long-term lease and pays rent. And then the rent increases over time, and that increases the value of the building. Simultaneously, we're paying down a mortgage, so at some point there's equity there and like some value for the ownership group too. But rent is our number one cost, and then everything, all the other costs that it would take to run an office are included, and we share that cost to our members. So that's going to be cleaning. That's going to be really great high-speed gigabit internet. Furniture and build out, which is included and sort of paid back from that lease. Some cases we might have debt, like in Detroit, that's our oldest store, so we still have loans we're paying off, but we're almost paid off there. Software and technology, all the little software that you use just add up. So a mix of like some business loans, but rent and then team and benefits to the team. Coffee and supplies and little things like that, but the biggest number one thing is rent.
Okay. So what kind of assets do you guys possess? Do you think, which buildings do you actually own versus lease? And do you think that your main value proposition comes from your intellectual property and the way you view things, like the amenities you offer and all that?
I do think there's something there. I think a lot of people think they can operate a co-working space, but they don't know what they're getting into, so they start small, or they don't build office product. So if you compare us to the local space in town that everybody knows called Cahoots, they have no private offices. So a lot of people kind of just do something fun or think they can just open up extra space, and then they realize, oh, I'm actually in the business of hospitality. This is really hard. In like a restaurant or a coffee shop, I need to be really busy and really excellent at what I do. So I do think there's something there. But we have two, what is the value to the customer or what is the value to the investor we bring on? The value to the investors is slightly different, and you'll see this in our pitch deck. That's we've secured a main-on-main high-end property that you'll probably never get access to because it's so hard to get. Even in Ann Arbor, it was extremely hard to get a landlord to work with us because they all wait to sell to the university. So we've got this great facility, and then guess what? We're also going to sign a long-term lease, which is rare now, and we're going to take care of all the day-to-day things you'll never need to worry about because we operate these spaces, hopefully at a high-quality caliber and experience for people. That's kind of the value for the investor, the pitch for the investor. I think we talked a lot about the value for the customer. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry I'm talking so much at you guys. I just feel like this is a lot of context, and I don't know how much you all know about real estate and co-working and entrepreneurship and all the good things.
No, we know quite a bit. Jackson's actually, he's going for a real estate minor, I believe, right? So...
Yeah, I've worked somewhat in real estate as well. I definitely did know that a lot of the landlords in Ann Arbor do hold out for the university, and I can imagine that it was hard to find anything near walkable distance to sell.
And because Ann Arbor is so expensive, you have to wait till the landlords will I had to wait till the price came down enough to make a deal.
How was it dealing with the town of Ann Arbor? Did you do a build out?
We did do a build out, but because it was a lighter build out, most of the renovations were done. It wasn't so hard. We heard a lot of negative warnings, but we already had a CFO. The customers before us, the tech company, did all the hard work. They fully renovated the space.
Gotcha.
So we just built some walls, some offices. So yeah, I think that's why it was a lot easier for us. Actually, the hardest city to operate in is in Detroit, which I think Detroit has a lot of brand buzz, but is actually very difficult to operate in.
Really? Interesting.
Just because there's a lot more massive challenges in Detroit than there, I think, are in Ann Arbor, but TBD, you guys would probably know more on that too.
So what kind of key technologies do you guys use to create your products or run the business?
We use a software called Office R&D. At the time when we transitioned over them, it was the middle of the pandemic, and they seem to be the best platform. It's white labeled, so you don't even know that we're using that. You download an app called Bamboo Detroit. That's kind of also something I need to finish doing is rebranding to Bamboo. Now that we're outside of Detroit and we're in Ann Arbor, people in Ann Arbor don't identify as Detroit. So we've started to change our social handles, everything. But you can download an app. You can use that to access the space, book rooms, connect with members. It's not the best in the community side, so we use Slack for community. We use MailChimp for our newsletter. We have a 50% open rate, so a lot of our members do read the newsletter. We use Webflow for our website. PC is our door technology, and that integrates with the app. Those are kind of the main ones. I mean, QuickBooks and some other little softwares, Canva, all things you all probably have used or are familiar with.
Yeah. So, how's your business organized? So, what are the main functions? How's the company structure? And, how big are your departments and all that?
I think I shared a little bit about this. It's structured more on a local level, and because this is our third location, we're trying to build out an HQ level now. So we do have a management company that oversees the 3 locations. Then each location has a community director. They're in charge of sales, and making sure the team and the community is thriving. They have a full-time community coordinator, so that's kind of like the second position. They help execute day-to-day on the facilities, on the tours, on the community events, and then an events associate who's part-time. They're flexible so that they can staff event rentals outside of business hours. All the sales is handled by each location. The marketing is kind of on me. I'm currently like HR, marketing, and like head of business development and managing all of our investors and finding a great location. So I have a many roles. The next role we're going to hire is going to be a director of operations or a general manager over these 3 locations. I'm going to have a lot of challenges when I open in Grand Rapids. I'm currently closing on that property right now. I'm hoping we'll be open in fall of next year, the latest. But that's going to be 2.5 hours away. So I have to make sure that that team can be stood up and kind of be on their own, but also not feel isolated from the rest of the team. And that market, some of the growing pains we're experiencing right now in Ann Arbor, like actually having a more fine-tuned marketing plan and like standing up the team quickly and making sure that everything's running just as we want each location to have its own like authenticity. We don't want it to look like every other Starbucks you walk in and everything's the same. But relatively, there has to be similarity, so there's brand consistency, but also authenticity to each local market. So that's kind of like a lesson I think we're trying to learn right now in Ann Arbor, and that's going to be, everything we're going through right now will be very applicable to opening a location 2 to 3 hours away, because as the owner that's been really hands-on, I can't be there physically. So this is going to be like a very exciting challenge to go through.
Okay.
There's
So we
a
also
lot to think about too.
Okay. So actually, that's going to lead us to our next section, which Armand and Varsha are going to cover.
All right. Hi, my name is Varsha. I'm a junior at UMich, and I'm on the pre-med track. And growing up just outside SF got me really interested in urban entrepreneurship, which is also why Bamboo Detroit really piqued my interest, because there's been a surge of these kind of co-working spaces in SF. So it's just been really great listening to what you have to say about Bamboo. But without further ado, let me just get to my questions. First, how exactly do customers satisfy their needs if not through, I guess, like your business? Like, what alternatives or substitute products or services are available that you guys offer?
Great question. And so nice to meet you guys, all of you. If you're an individual, you're working from home, but maybe you're going to a coffee shop to get out of the house or take meetings. And if you're a team, you're probably debating between traditional office space, which is signing a 5-year, 10-year lease and putting a lot of money in and paying a premium like you were talking about in New York, or choosing something more flexible and hybrid and having cheaper costs by paying for an office at a Bamboo space. For example, we have a 40-person team called Momentum. Typically, they would probably be building out an HQ space just like SkySpecs. They're at 40 people in Ann Arbor. They come in once or twice a week. But instead, they got 2 private offices, seating for 20. Since they rotate in a couple times, they just need less space. And they're only spending like $8K a month versus what SkySpecs could be spending, which could be like 3 or 4 or 5 times that, depending on the market.
Wonderful, thank you. Who exactly are your key competitors, segueing off of that?
We see them as Regis, which you all know is corporate and just such a different customer base. We work in some markets, maybe industrial. They're not in Michigan yet. They're kind of like number 2, I think, in our industry to WeWork. And then local. There's always local indie co-working spaces like Cahoots in Ann Arbor, but they don't usually build out private offices. In Detroit, if you're shopping, you probably want to be downtown, and it's just kind of us and WeWork and a Regis in the Rensen. Nobody wants to go to the Rensen though.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, location is also part of that. It really depends. New Lab has really affected us in Detroit because they're this $1 billion beautiful facility built by Ford. So they're just there's a lot more product coming online, similar to what you said in New York, that's really high end and affordable, or they're discounting it. So that's kind of a local, I guess, question for each store too.
Mm-hmm. But every time I searched up coworker spaces in Ann Arbor, Bamboo really did come up as one of the premier options in the Detroit metro area. So clearly you guys are doing something right.
What challenges or hurdles specifically do you think were the most notable when you were building this business model?
Well, the pandemic, which you just can't plan for a crisis. But I think I have different problems now, like today. So Detroit's a different market. We're still recovering a little bit there, so that's like a problem. Where I look being so busy, we just noticed we had a few people outgrow us at year 3. But I realized that, like, I think we need to focus on member retention more, culturally. Like, we've been so focused on come back to space, or we're brand new, come here, and now how to keep people beyond 2 or 3 years. Some people do stay longer, but as you guys probably know, our learning class, the more a customer stays with you, the more money you save. Like, going out and getting new customers always costs more. So that's kind of a challenge. And then I think internal operations, like how do we make sure each location has that brand consistency? I probably need to hire someone to help on operations sooner than I want to.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure that, like, we do stabilize Ann Arbor, that's a big critical piece to our success. And then really doing a better job at our branding and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
So people know all the things we just talked about that are regional. Who's here, our community, like we have so many cool people in Bamboo. People always tell me all the time that we undermarket ourselves. We don't show off our community enough on Instagram. Stuff like that. Like, I think we need all the things that I don't have time to do, essentially.
I think was the best decision that you made as the leader in the company?
Recently, like in the last few years, doing the Royal Oak property. At the time that we did that, you guys, we took all our savings and we put it in the purchase of a property 6 months before the global pandemic hit and people returned to work, told to work from home. So we could have walked that decision back out of fear. We had to decide, do we believe co-working is a model that's going to work in the future when people do come back? And it did, and that location is by far our busiest and most successful. It's just thriving. I think it's one, the location, 2, the team there is just excellent. So we have kind of proven this theory. One of my mentors said, like, are you able to replicate the community and the culture you built in Detroit? And I'm like, yes, we could prove that we can do that. Location is a big part of it. And then now in Ann Arbor, it's like, I think we didn't realize Ann Arbor is such a different market than Detroit and the rest of Metro Detroit. So we're still learning all these things about this market. But the best decision we probably made was doing that, because that's now our model store and we want to replicate that model everywhere we go.
Sounds great. I think I'll hand it off to, thank you so much for answering those questions and just elaborating on everything, and I'll hand it off to Armand to take over.
Yeah, hi Amanda. It was great hearing about like everything so far. Really quick introduction. I'm Armin. I'm a BBA sophomore here, so you're younger than the rest of these people. But yeah, I guess I wanted to get started, keep it really short here. What would you think was the one single biggest roadblock you had when building Bamboo other than COVID? Like, what was the hardest decision you had to make? Something like that.
That's a great question, because it probably is COVID. But I think there's this personal decision that I had to make, and maybe it's like being a woman. Like, I feel like I never thought of myself as a CEO or somebody in real estate, and we originally started as a team of 4. I had to buy out 2 of my business partners. Mm-hmm. One I'm still in business with. But I had to step into like the idea of being a CEO or a leader. Mm-hmm. And I felt radically uncomfortable with that. I just knew that I loved what I was doing and I wanted to figure it out and make it a sustainable business.
Did you feel like, especially in COVID times when things were really difficult to like stay focused, did you feel like your kind of motivation and love for the business really drove you?
Yeah, I have a very intrinsic purpose to build community and to change the culture in Michigan and create, we hope, as the businesses grow at Bamboo, there's an economic impact. And like 10 years ago, it was like you worked in auto or not at all. And none of us want that. We all want to work on cool, new, and exciting products and to work at technology companies and build a future and make a more inclusive future. So yeah, I'm very internally aligned with the mission and vision of Bamboo.
Yeah, oh, that's awesome to hear. It's great to hear your story and everything. I guess in terms of like growth levers, I know we've talked about this like a lot, but I would say like in moving forward in your expansion, what's the one thing that you think will like revolutionize your business or really be the next step to getting where you want to be?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think figuring out our sales and marketing and branding.
Mm-hmm.
I think we just kind of had a lot of organic word of mouth and success over 10 years. And like as we expand in our burger efforts, we need to really look at the next new markets and have a better strategy there. And then I think it's all about people executing that strategy. So like hiring the right team at each location is like so important, and training them better so that they can build that culture. Like that's really huge because I can't be on site anymore. So anyone needs to have that same Bamboo experience wherever they go.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you so much, Amanda, for the interview. We really learned so much about Bamboo and just left feeling so inspired. And all the best. I know you just finished maternity leave. All the best with your new baby and everything.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys later.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice to meet you.